Hey everybody, Anish Majumdar here. Really happy that you could join me for this special session on the lie of the smart lateral move, right? Um, I want to jump right into this because, I know a lot of people here who are joining are time compressed. You might be joining this in the middle of the day, in the middle of a bunch of things going on, and I want to make sure that this resonates with you, that it's valuable to you. But I also just want to be really, really clear right from the get go. This is for leaders. This is not for people who are just starting out. This is not for people who are looking for their first big break. These are for leaders who feel stifled, right? And very specifically, I'm going to be talking to a very specific subset of you guys, okay? So I'm talking about people who are rising up, director, VP, even C-suite. You're rising up, but it's getting harder, not easier. Like there's less pleasure, there's more friction, there's more blowback, and you're having trouble figuring out what's going on, right? You're clearly competent. Okay. It's very, very clear. You've got years of experience, you've got expertise, you've got the bona fides. But guess what? At one point, you could leverage based on that. Now you can't. What's going on? Maybe you're more visible in the organization than you ever have been before, right? Woo! You got the visibility, right? You're not just like an invisible cog there. Okay, you're visible, but why do you feel more marginalized instead of less marginalized, even though you have more exposure? What's going on? Probably the biggest one, and I want you to really get honest with yourself here, okay? Are you fundamentally trusted to execute or decide? And what would we expect from a leader at this level that you're in right now? Would we expect someone who is all execution, no deciding? Or has something maybe gone awry here? Okay, so I want to really jump into this because if you can get a handle on this, the amount of movement that's available is enormous. But I'm also not going to like beat around the bush, right? It's not just a question of frustration or resentment or asking yourself why you're still playing defense, right? If you are feeling anywhere from the director level on up and you're feeling boxed into competence, or you're feeling like you're a transformation leader who was totally topped out and now they're, like leading you on, right? Whatever that is, you have to understand there's very real consequences. And it's very possible that if you've had to recently accept a lateral move, or you're like looking at that right now and you're under pressure to accept, this could be the most important conversation that you have about your career all year. Okay, because before you do that, it's important that as a leader you understand what's really going on, and companies have an incentive not to be honest with you when it comes to this. There's an advantage they have with you being stuck in the lateral trap. Okay, so that's what I want to like jump in here. And I want to just also take a second to just let you know, beyond a career coach, beyond someone who helps leaders in this capacity every single day, this particular topic has a lot of deep resonance with me because I saw my father deal with this and ultimately be unable to overcome this in his own life, right? Really, really, really brilliant engineer, turned leader, turned someone who could manage, turned someone who can launch facilities, manage complex operations, state-of-the-art technologies, right? Well, he reached a VP level, and despite having the trust, despite having the exposure, despite having all of those things, and honestly working harder than I've ever seen anyone to this day work, that was as far as he went. And they kept promising him, they kept leading him on, they kept telling him that it was going to be next quarter, next year, right? And he kept assuming that on good faith. Also kind of copping out because of that, right? Not testing it. And what happened is that elongation of his role happened long enough that it just gelled. And instead of it being like he's the leader that we can count on moving forward, he just became the VP that everyone relied on. The person who's not going to kick up a fuss, the person who's like a potted plant. That's the worst possible outcome for a leader. It's the worst possible outcome for someone like you to have reached this level and be pushed out at that stage and have your good work not only not be recognized, but you start to get bitter. I saw my dad not get bitter, but he got disillusioned, right? Because he saw so many other people with traction. He saw team members that he'd nurtured rising up, but that wasn't happening for him, right? So What is a lateral move? Because he accepted multiple of those. And you may have accepted multiple of those. And you may be listening to this thinking, oh crap, this might be too late. So what are we talking about, right? A lateral move, whether we call it a same job with a better label or more scope, but the exact same amount of compensation, right? That never happens by accident. Or exposure, but you actually have less practical authority. Or maybe you switch divisions, but guess what? It feels like you're starting over because you also lost all of your allies. All of these are the same thing, okay? It's a betrayal. It's you engaging in something honestly, and then the organization screwing you over and trying to get you to buy their narrative, because if they do, they can keep doing it. They can keep reaping unfair rewards, and you're a part of the illusion. You're a part of the deception. What all of those boil down to, if there's anything in you that needs to self-justify the promotion, if there's anything in you that needs to like psych yourself up before you tell your wife, right? Because on some level there's shame there, that will tell you the truth. That's what a lateral move actually is. And it's really important that you understand this, because if you don't, you'll never see the fundamental truth, which is, as when it comes to leaders, there's not a haves and have-nots. There is the executive underclass of people who cannot actually function with authority, but who have enough capability to be there, and everybody else. And the people who are in the everybody else completely sucks out the blood and the juice of people in that underclass. And the underclass don't usually say anything or do anything about it, because on some level they believe that that's the price of admission. On some level they believe that that's the only way they can be competitive, is to silently do more and accept less than any of their so-called peers. And that's what I want to challenge in you right here and right now. Because if you're stuck in this, the part that we can't address is that internal part of you that believes on some level that you deserve second-rate status. And if you're on the fence with that, I want to shake you out of your apathy, because responsible leaders and people who are effective feel that way more than others. And that's exactly the mentality and mindset that gets taken advantage of. I want to go a little bit deeper into this so you can start seeing some of the specific ways that this manifests, okay? But I want you to start right there and start taking a stand on that, right? If not for you, for your family, for your kids. There's no second-rate status here, right? We're all peers. We're all first-degree citizens here. So let's talk about how you can actually be successful and correct it if it's possible to do so, right? The first shift, and I want you guys to be super clear with this, write this down. Stop letting yourself get scope compressed. Let me repeat that. Stop letting yourself get scope compressed. What does that mean? You're competent. You're low threat. You're okay with accepting praise instead of real authority. You negotiate from gratitude, and your upper movement creates risk for people, okay? These are the things that are going on, right? So they see that someone who's a hard worker, he or she is talented, all of that. You're not fighting. You're not drawing any boundaries. You're just silently working and silently taking on, right? And then what they realize is, as effective as you are, there's going to be a limit here, because if they don't reward you and work with you, you're going to top out. You're going to get dissatisfied. So how do we fix this? Scope compression, right? So here's some of what happens here, okay? And I want you to really diagnose this in you, okay? First, the perception of you is that you're execution first. Oh, nobody can do X the way that you do. Not nobody can change things the way that we do, right? Nobody can solve the problem, put out the fire the way that you can. Nobody can solve that client relationship, which we blew and you somehow pulled off. You are the turnaround expert. So you start getting anchored for your execution, and you'll notice that, okay? That they're specifically avoiding looking at your strategic contributions. They're not interested in that, nor do they want to reward that. That's a warning sign, right? Your compensation starts being tracked based on like the second-rate priorities. So at the beginning, it was strategic impact, strategic change. Now it's becoming volume. It's becoming how many clients. It's becoming how many times can you solve it. In other words, their tolerance for the miracles is increasing, and there hasn't been a shift in how that's happening, right? And then what happens is, as they compress you, future promotions get reduced because you're operating from a state of compression, right? So I'll give you guys an example of this. And then large scale, when the market beyond your company right now, once they start realizing that we're not really talking to a VP, we're not really talking to a VP of operations, SVP of operations, we're certainly not talking to a CTO, we're talking to someone who sold themselves out for a title, but once we actually dive beneath, it's very, very clear. You may have that title, you don't operate that way. That's what scope compression does. It creates a dissonance so that who you say you are versus what you can back up and the achievements and accomplishments are not the same. One is lower level than the other. One is bullshit. And once that happens, there goes your integrity. There goes any leverage you have in the hiring market. Hello. Unquantifiable, totally commoditized job seeker. Right? That's the trap. I remember working with a client of mine, Dale, perennial number 2, right? COO, woo! Looks so good on paper. This guy is miserable because underneath the surface, the way he got there was he was sending out all these low-level subservient signals despite his best efforts. So the bad actor CEOs immediately saw, hey, this is someone who I can abuse all the way to the bank. Right? I can take their best ideas, I can squeeze them dry, and they're not going to say anything. They have been trained to not say anything. So there's a bullying dynamic there, right? And because he didn't know how to address that, he just kept making it worse. Everything he did sent more signals to this bully. Please do it. Please do it. Please do it. Right? And so when you look at this, right, and he looked at it, and he's asking yourself, what the hell do I do? Right? He's saying, look, I got the inflated title, but the decisions aren't there, right? I got the global, perspective and scope, but I don't have any actual P&L authority. That's a big one, right? My performance is growing, but my platform is shrinking, right? And so what he did in terms of breaking forth, first and foremost, right? The hardest thing he did was coming to a realization that says, do I want the remainder of my career to look like this? Right? He had to reach a moment of clarity and truth that says, do I want the rest of my career to look good on the surface and garbage on the inside? Am I willing to make this the bet that one after another, I doubt myself, I fear myself, and over time, the worst opinions of these people starts becoming the way that I see myself. And he's like, nope, no way. I will give up whatever the gains are of that path. I want something better. I commit to that. Okay. Then stage 2, and these are some of the specifics, okay? What does addressing scope compression actually look like? Number 1, okay, we would see a leader who is absolutely against expanding any form of additional workload without clear understanding of authority. If I can't see how this additional thing directly aligns to the 20 to 30% of my job that is going to move this company forward, I'm not interested and I'm able to defend that. Okay? Number 2, there's decision rights. So you don't just accept decisions. When it hits your people, your division, you don't just silently accept the email, silently accept that directive. You challenge, you question, you investigate. You're not always getting your dukes up, but the assumption is there's nothing we just accept because you're the one who has ownership over your domain. It ultimately stops with you. So for you to not do that means you're abdicating your responsibility. The lack of auditing decisions like that, right, is one of the biggest red flags that bad actors have that tells you, oh, you're not taking ownership. So you're a worker bee. So I can dictate the terms, and strong personalities will, of course, do that, right? Your compensation. There's not a single person I've seen who's been stuck in this trap who doesn't have the most embarrassingly low valuation of what their ultimate compensation is that I've ever seen. And I mean, it's off by a factor of like 8 to 10 sometimes, right? It's not even in the same domain. And yet when I ask them about it, right, this CTO, this whatever, will say whatever, some ridiculous number, 150K or whatever, 175. It's a stretch. It's a stretch. Well, who told them it was a stretch? It was not a stretch. If you look at what this person did, what they can contribute, what the market will reward right now, it's top dollar. But this person has been marginalized for the last 5+ years. They accepted this BS for 5+ years. So I'm sorry, you're not just going to be able to keep, and I hear this so often from leaders who accept this, right? They'll say, I'll solve it on the next one. I'll solve it on the next one. How? You either advocate for yourself and you find a way to do that there, or you find a way to leave on your own terms with authority, or you don't. But this idea of like you're going to fix it on the next one while the precedent is hardening on this one is total garbage. It's a total lie. And I really want to challenge that in you, because a lot of times, beyond the people that I'm lucky enough to get to know through some of these, right, and work with and directly help, right, there's a bunch of people who are just coming in with lousy lies masquerading as strategy. This has to be addressed now. If you're serious about getting out of the executive underclass, you have to make moves right now. Not tomorrow, not when it's going out there, okay? You can either attempt what you need to do now, or you can avoid it. But it's highly unlikely that down the line, with worse perception, with more marginalization, and with you having less energy and more age behind you, that you're somehow going to find the courage to rewrite the perception. Not happening, okay? So I want you to be very honest with yourself. How much do you make right now? Really, I want you to ask yourself. And do you make compromises that you shouldn't be making? Especially when it comes to rewarding your children, your family, your life, and your future. If you know for a fact that there's no way that your current level is going to suffice, then maybe it's time to stop like racing ahead of the people who are going to devalue you and look at a reset. Look at a total reset of your valuation. That can be done, right? But not so long as you believe that you secretly deserve that. As long as someone who should be making 450K believes that 275 is the greatest thing that ever happened to them, and they're lucky to get it because there's red flags that you don't see, that's it for you, right? 280 is going to seem like a reach for you because you don't see the reality of what's there, right? And political capital, that's another one, okay? Scope compression happens in a big way because people who should be building allyships, in other words, you being out there, owning ideas, advocating, right? Investigating, you're not doing that because you think the work is going to speak for itself. So guess what? Other people will accrue political capital. And you can call it playing politics or whatever the hell it is that you want, right? But bottom line, what it results in is people feeling more safe and comfortable working with others because they took the time to get to know them and align with them. And you didn't take the time to know or align or risk that exposure, real exposure. You wanted your work, in other words, your silence and non-presence to do the work for you. And then you get screwed, right? So that's the first thing, okay, is you've got to stop letting yourself get scope compressed, right? Really look at that, right? The second one is I want you to stop mistaking political isolation for heroism, right? I've just briefly started talking about this, right? Your work speaks for itself. You assume alignment with everybody else without ever testing it. So you got hired on a mandate and it's literally 8.5 months after you started the job and you somehow still think those are the main things, that nothing has changed. When in all reality, everything has changed, right? And you're the one who's lagging behind and you haven't adapted, right? Never assume alignment with fellow leaders. Never assume that you guys are on the same page. Assume that you're not. And what's a way to clearly communicate and bridge that gap is a far more better way to look at it, right? Are you someone who just avoids all kinds of friction, right? A lot of people who are like kind of do-goody types who got into leadership and maybe shouldn't really be in leadership, right? They're so petrified of any conflict that they look at any like challenge or like explain this or walk me through this as literally risk and overwhelm. Well, if you don't want to look at that and you're still stuck at this amateurish state where suppressing emotions is like part of your job description, I don't know what to tell you, right? Because conflict and friction is a part of the job description. For ultimate impact, for going to the heights of where your potential demands, it's about changing the way you see that and making that productive, right? But if you're literally, if half of your job strategy is avoidance, what do you think the outcome of avoidance is? Do you really think that you're going to be able in a competitive market to stand out, to differentiate, and to deliver outstanding impact? Do you really think that's going to happen in a silence vacuum, right? In a vacuum of avoidance that basically, allows you to do nothing, say nothing, and navigate nothing. Big leaders, we see the way you navigate uncertainty. That's one of the biggest ones. We see what happens when that team member that we can tell does not respect you. What do you do? What's the actions that you take, right? It's really, really like key that you look at this. Okay, isolating yourself, like retreating, is rarely a good thing, right? Because the more you do that, the more, again, you become the trusted executor, not executioner, no directional force, right? And once that starts to set in, like, you're going to have to mount a massive campaign to try to change that. Okay, so here are the warning signs specifically. If you're at risk of this, I want you to look at this. Okay, these are clear signs that the isolation is happening to you. Okay, number one, you're consistently getting looped in late to projects, initiatives, ideas, and decision making that should be there. You should be there in that room, and they're telling you after the fact. That's number one. Number two, initiatives are reshaped without you. Initiatives that touch on your zones and domains of expertise are being shaped without you. Number three, praise for execution. This is the biggest consistent warning sign, right? Things are going wrong. Influence is not there, but they keep trying to hide it by like placating your ego, right? Don't stand for that, right? You're not present in the defining moments. That's what, getting looped and laid often means. And in the org chart, right? Like when you look at it, yeah, you've got a place in there. But if you're being really honest about who has the power in this organization, it's not you. It's not you, right? So some ways, right, when I'm coaching someone and they want to get a handle on this and move into a real promotion cycle inside of the next like 2 to 3 months, if they're serious about like going way out and securing the next 3 to 5 high-level offers at a level they never have to in the next 2 to 3 months, right? Some of the things that you would address at work, you would test that alignment, right? There's ways that you can, on a week-by-week, month-by-month basis, test and correct alignment with bosses, with leadership. That's essential to success nowadays, right? You would challenge framing early, right? When people are trying to marginalize you or move it there, you know how to do that in a productive way. You know how to challenge productively as a leader, right? You're able to name trade-offs, right? You're able to go in there, talk about what worked, but be very honest about what didn't, right? Because you don't have to like steer clear. You don't have to protect. You don't have to patronize. So I can say, out of these 5, these 3 things really worked out. 4 did not. 5, as I said, was never a relevant priority for us to have. And if anything, that proved that number 5 should not even be on the plate right now. So what can we do to address that and make sure that we get the outcome here that we're looking for, right? I'm okay. The more open you are with trade-offs, with things that didn't work, the more it's a clear signal that says, this is someone who's confident. Because we don't expect perfection from you, but we expect accountability. We expect transparency. And again, if you're so risk avoidant and conflict avoidant that you have non-existent or near non-existent skills in these areas, or simply not strong enough skills in these areas, then you need to look at that deficit, right? If like doing it your own and trying to like trial and error this stuff is resulting in garbage results, then something needs to be done if you actually want that result, right? The clear thing here, leverage is what's missing here, okay? And leverage doesn't happen without some political capital. And the way you generate that political capital does not have to be as a phony, does not have to be as someone that you're not. There's methods that you can do it, but it requires you signaling in the right way, being open and assertive in the right way, and establishing these actions for the remainder of your time onwards. It has to be a consistent part of your practice. And that's the part that a lot of the senior leaders that I work with will have trouble with. They know the ideas, they know some of the basics, but in order to actually implement it in the room, in the trenches, that requires an expert working with you, right? Number 3. And I'm excited to blow the brains off of this stupid myth that's been holding so many of you back. And literally, I'm just going to be very honest here, because I see the offer letters. This is the stuff that costs you 6-7 figures over the course of your lifetime. This is the stuff that's the difference between someone who whimpers away out of the market versus someone who has the choice and builds generational wealth for him and his family, right? This is the stuff. And the more judgmental you are about this stuff, the more you hide. And honestly, I'll get emails from people after this stuff, right? I got like the most absurd email I've ever seen from a leader who's been obviously stuck. She's been stuck in stagnation for over 6 years. Take a look at her LinkedIn profile. Anyone can see it, right? Anish, thank you so much for telling me things that I already know. Everything here was something that I know. Wasn't really helpful. Great. Fantastic. Right? Good justification to stay doing exactly what it is that you're going to do. Right? And the question I would always have is it making your life better or not? If literally you're going through most of your career, most of your days, looking for negative points and justification, like looking to find people who screwed up their careers because it makes you feel better for the fact that you're silently screwing up yours, I don't really know what to tell you. That might be a case of you being irreparably messed up and no amount of coaching can solve it, right? That's a mental screw up issue, right? And that goes much, much deeper than just a lateral move. And I just want to be very, very clear with that, because unless it's like not blatantly obvious, I have no problem talking about the trade-offs either, right? And I work with people like you. I work with you guys. So I don't buy the BS because I know the truth of what you guys are experiencing out there. And I know that behind the window dressing, there's so much cope. There's so much fear-based decision-making that is masquerading as rationality. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next month. Are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me right now? Is that what you would advise someone that you cared about, right? Shift 3, strategic exposure is a myth, okay? The idea that you just getting more face time with people in your company is an absolutely valueless thing to do, right? And here's why it happens. I know it feels valuable, right? If I was talking with people all day, right, it might feel valuable. I'm helping people even, right? I'm getting to know what they're doing in their professional careers, whatever. But if there's no discernment there, if there's no like sense of why am I speaking to them, how does that advance or not advance, then it's useless. It's wasted time, right? Cross-functional work, right, that doesn't actually advance what you can do best does not help. Work that doesn't move in a strategic capacity for you doesn't help, okay? More surface area, right? And a lot of you are experiencing this. You have promotions on paper that literally screwed you over to the extent that you have basically 2 jobs now. Congratulations. You have 2 jobs making basically what you were making at one. And everyone's congratulating you because why wouldn't they, right? You're making everybody's life so much easier except your own, right? The problem with that is, right, you start taking on this work, you start gaining this face time, your authority actually weakens, right? Because real senior leaders are like, where's the discernment here? Is this really someone who has this much extra time to do? First of all, boundaries, forget about it, right? When you try to actually say, look, this is in our domain, this is not, good luck saying no to that when literally any Tom, Dick, and Harry for any beginner assignment gets to go onto your calendar, right? Does that make sense? It kills discernment and it changes indispensability, which is what your business really is. Every one of us at the high level, we are in the business of being indispensable, not helpful. Exposure, surface is helpful, and that is bull crap at your level. That is the worst signal for you to be sending, right? When we expect high authority indispensability and you give us low-level desperate helpfulness, you tell us that we were freaking stupid to bet on you. That's the reality of what it is, right? I remember working with Priyanka, an innovator in healthcare, who came to this realization. She was heading up the one division in this company that was really doing really out of the box stuff. You know what I mean? Not just spinning their wheels, actually building new solutions, actually being at the forefront of that kind of positive change. Well, amazing successes, right? Well, at a certain point, she realized that they're never going to look at this stuff, as valid as these ideas were, as anything more than like 5% of their revenues and ideas. That's what it amounted to. Good face value compliments. Priyanka, you're amazing. How amazing. Look at how we promoted a woman to this level too. It's incredible. It's incredible, isn't it? Yeah, it's incredible. It's really amazing. Not so much for her, because when they stopped being able to, when she was asking for the right level up, when she was moving for that, rather than give that to her, they said, hey, you're not quite ready. Get a little bit of exposure, okay? You need to go outside of your bubble a little bit, right? So let's do a little bit more meetings, no ownership. Fix that, but don't give you decision-making authority, right? Thanked all the time, advanced never, right? And the effort expands. This is the real test. Your authority never does. That's what being busy and visible instead of powerful really looks like. For her, what we did was, we figured out how can we make sure that we give you every last possibility here to rewrite the story here? She was not able, because this is not Pollyanna here, okay? In that period of time, in the first month, we both realized working with her, that she's not going to be able to like get this attainment. Too much damage has been done. The impressions of the leadership has shifted enough. But what we could do is protect her, protect her domain, protect what she's doing, protect her authority, protect her people. And then as she has that safety, we can build the momentum and help her and guide her in creating a campaign that brings new relationships, opportunities her way and does it high level. In other words, her dialoguing right at the CEO level, right at the COO level, right? And deploying and leveraging her power as someone who has done this work and is still has that perception of leverage. We wanted to do that before things got bad there, to the point where she couldn't just say that. And if she had stuck around for year 3, 4, 5, I guarantee you right now, we would be looking at just another, wow, well-qualified leader who kind of bottomed out where she was. And she's taking basically the same job, and now it's your identity, right? Instead of heading direction and making sure that her pioneering spirit actually had a vehicle to move forward, right? That's the difference, right? For Dale, it wasn't so much about securing like the next role without the bullies. It was to have the ability to actually say, can I do this work and feel good? Can I actually do this work, have impact, and look at my son in the eyes? Because I know I didn't make some weird like silent compromise with my boss today. You know, that's what it was about, right? For all of us, when we look at the road ahead, right? And we look at solving this stuff. Yeah, on some level, maybe it's compensation, maybe it's all of those things, but really it's hitting you on some level of your hero's journey, right? Not being taken seriously, not being able to move forward, not being able to see this in the short time frame that you have is costing something in the way that you look at yourself. And for her, for Dale, for so many others that I've coached, the process of owning this and getting the outcomes are what everyone else sees. But what the outside world doesn't see, what I'm lucky enough to see and witness, is I see the lights coming back on in someone. I see the fire coming back on in someone. I see the people pleasing start to drop away, and this fierce freaking warrior queen or king start to come to the forefront. I live for that. I live for those moments where I get to see the best of you step forward and finally be seen and rewarded for that, right? So if you wanted to reduce the strategic exposure error here, okay? Reduce your surface area, okay? Chances are it is already way, way, way too overexposed, right? I want you to get in the habit of declining rooms without decision rights, right? You got to learn how to say no to those things in the right way, just as Priyanka learned. Otherwise, she'd spend her whole life working on priorities that actually bring her further away from success. You've got to figure out a way to convert exposure into ownership. Let me repeat that because it is so critical and so critically unknown to the leaders that I talk to. It is not just about exposure. It is exposure as the fuel towards ownership. So if what you're asked to do, if what you're looking at is not going to result in you having more domain authority, it's not worth doing. Simple as that. And if you're a leader who's capable, then your brain works just fine. So if you've reached that conclusion and you're still doing it, it's not a brain thing. It's an insecurity thing. It's you need help with this thing, right? Because you're making it worse. Signal selectively and protect your strategic energy, okay? This is very, very key, okay? Looking at your comms, looking at how you're handling the day-to-day, week-to-week aspects of your work, right? And what are you signaling out there? A lot of times, what we'll see is high performers will unwittingly come across desperate in their communications, right? Because they don't know what to do aside from basically run through the gaps. So a lot of times, we'll have to look through that stuff with a fine-tooth comb and really help someone reset. So they understand, before I raise finger one, email one, call one, I know what it is that I need to do. I'm aligned with that. I know what the plan is. I know what the specific drivers are and the pitfalls are here. And I'm able to execute on that, right? That's what actually solving something like this looks like. Anything else is valueless, you throwing things at a wall and trying to deal with surface symptom issues and not dealing with the disease underneath. This is about your value. This is about your self-worth. This is about what you truly feel you deserve out there as a result of the sacrifices that you've made and the time that you've spent, as we all have, away from our kids, away from doing other things that we might want to do. This is where it gets real, folks, right? Shift 4. This kind of brings some of these ideas together, hopefully, and I want you to really understand this, okay? What all of this means is fundamentally you're mistaking movement for power, right? Early on in your career, and this is true for all of us, you got ahead by doing, most probably, right? Doing more, taking on more, complaining less. That game is over, okay? And let's take a second and spread the ashes of this bad idea into the Ganges for a second, okay? That's over. Your capability is assumed. You can take that for granted. And let me provide that permission if you need it openly, because someone had to give that permission to me too, okay? I'm a recovering overworker. I'm a recovering stay silent and call that all politics. I'm a recovering, would rather do 10 times out of 10 rather than leverage and be, right? But this you've got to understand. It's time to take that part as assumed. You don't have to prove it anymore. You don't have to keep working on that, okay? Now the question is not capability. The question you want to ask yourself is, do I have the power to pull this off? Do I have the power to do what I need to do here, to rock this idea, to make this change, to resolve this conflict, right? This is the change, okay? And it's so critical that you understand this, because as soon as you move away from a capability first to a power first strategy here, things start changing really, really, really quickly. And I mean this in a very, very practical way here, right? Once you start doing that, once you can start looking at this game in the right way and then back it up with the right actions consistently, right? The right play, momentum starts coming in, right? You start being looked at as indispensable, right? You start looking at actual levels up for what they are, not fake ones, right? Burnout, right, becomes a huge thing the more you start misreading movement for power, right? Ruptured senior relationships, and you might have already experienced this, right? You're doing the good work that you need to. How come that person cooled on you, right? What happened there, right? Why didn't that happen? It's because they're expecting a dynamic based on power and authority, right? Your power, your authority over what you do, and only you can do it, right? And you're giving them movement. And movement is not something that leaders can really engage with, especially unfocused, right? And then finally, market valuation lags, right? And so if you want to ask yourself, what happens here? Imagine a role that should be done in 2 to 3 years. You're 5, 6, 7 years in. Imagine salaries that should be negotiated every single year. It's been 3 years since your last bump up. It's going to be 3 again because now you think it's going to be every 3 years. It's you being pushed out, not just of the rooms, the decision rooms at your current role, but you not having the balls or the skill to be able to navigate and get yourself into the rooms of new companies, of new leaders. Because guess what? You know how we said your capability should be taken for granted? Your ability to get the roles also needs to be completely thrown out in the trash and replaced with something high level and relational, something that leverages your authority instead of movement, right? And the vast majority of you, if I were to take your job away right now, you would default to all movement, all quantity. Blast those applications out. Try to get anyone on the phone. This is desperate movement. Do you understand? That's not power, but you have different cards to play. Why aren't you playing them, right? I'm working with someone, Chris, right now, lucky enough to be able to be working with him for a third time. Every time he was able to transformatively upgrade his role. This time, the way he's doing it, and again, like I said, externals are fantastic. It's why we start doing it. But internal is what the real payoff is for us, right? For him, he was so done with expanding scope and not mandate. He was so done with having to reprove competence and actually defend his role that he knew that, hey, you know what? I got to rise, but I got to rise in the right way, right? So what does that look like for him now? What it looks like for him now is negotiating major compensation increases can be done with an email and a follow-up. That's it. Getting consensus for new initiatives can be done over a 10-minute call because they already buy who he is. They buy who he is at the strategic level. When he moves on, he's going to get allies, recommendations, anything he needs. He's not going to get ruptured relationships. He's not going to get, what the hell, what's going on here? I thought we were treating you fair, right? Because he was very clear, including the trade-offs, right? When I'm helping someone and coaching someone through an exit, one of the clearest priorities is being very clear about what's working, but also what's not, and expressing that stuff in a consistent professional way so that as you leave, there's no mystery. If we're able to make a go of it, we know why. And you're doing it as a high leverage authority. If we're not able to do it, you're moving on with power as a leader does it. And you're doing it with no rupture because we were clear. We're clear about what worked. We're clear about what didn't. So if the relationship doesn't work, that's fine. Whatever butthurt feelings we have, we left on a place of truth. And that as a leader, you've got to insist on, okay? So you want to stop reproving competence. You want to convert responsibility into true authority. When you speak, it's from mandate, not movement and desperation. And you want to maintain external channels, right? This is very, very key. I don't care how happy you think you are at your role. Probably not that happy if you're taking this training, very honestly. But wherever you are, you know how we said stop like taking your capability, like stop trying to reprove that, right? Stop with the idea that there's any form of work that you can do at your role that replaces even the tiniest amount of keeping the external channel to the outside world open. Because it's not, right? The simplest way that we can keep you in momentum and ensure that you keep growing is making sure that the business of you talking to leaders at higher levels, you being able to leverage your authority, you being able to get in the hot seat of not just emergent roles, but straight up create roles for yourself. And if you don't know how to do that, you don't know how to actually search for these roles, because that's what executive search really is. It's actually role creation, not role discovery, right? If you don't know how to do those things, then what I'm simply going to say here is you've probably outgrown doing it your way. You've probably taken it as far as you can go as a good student doing it on your own. And so now let's be really clear here. Effort is not the issue, right? Bias is, blind spots are, built-in, erroneous, weak, low-level thinking is the problem. And so when leaders are at this juncture, they either double and triple down on denial, or they understand we need to pressure test. We need to do something right here to bring reality into this situation, because I need to be strong enough to see what's precisely going on. And then I need to precisely understand, what do I do now? Right here and now, right? That's what pressure testing is, right? And if you know that you're in a zone where you need to do something like that, let me quickly provide this link here. I'm just going to make it very quick because you should know. helloanish.com/apply-presence. If you're able to go there, you'll see this page and you'll have an opportunity, if there's some booking spots left, to book some one-on-one time with me. Okay. The reason I am providing that is to look for that 1 in 100, look for that 1 in 500, right? If you're ready to take action, I want to make sure that this training that you took is supported. And that means that you don't go back into invisibility and being, taken advantage of. It means that you actually correlate this into actual concrete change. And if you're unable to do that, you're not ready to take any action on this, and you're not ready to really solve this, right? So I want to give that link out to you there. Take it right now. We're not going to belabor this. My calendar fills up really quickly. So if you don't see any spots there, you've missed the boat on this one. Okay. Hope that makes sense, guys. I'll see you guys on the next one.